Welcome, everybody, to another installment of the Inside the Nest podcast. I'm Patrick McNeil, joined by my co-host, Brad Chandler, and joined by a very special guest today, Mario Cecchini. Mario, you're in Cape Breton doing your tour of the league. What are your initial thoughts of the market of Cape Breton and that you had a chance to spend some time here?
Well, it was a wonderful day yesterday, first of all. Met a lot of people, met all of the owners. With Erwin, of course, everybody was in. We had a great meetings. Probably it's always good for me to meet the people, those who make it happen, but understand also the challenges, the objectives that everybody's trying to achieve. So that's really the most important thing. And then obviously met with Mayor McDougall yesterday, discussed a little bit about the association with the Eagles and all of that. So it was a pretty good day. And obviously last night it ended with a win for the Eagles. So I'm not allowed to cheer for anyone. But when the own team wins, the fans go home happier. So
Mario,
everybody's happy.
18 different favorite teams, Brad.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you said this was 18 out of 18 for your for the league tour. What were some of the differences you've noticed amongst the teams, maybe from Quebec and the Maritimes?
Well, I think it's between Quebec and the Maritimes specifically. I think the infrastructure issue is way bigger in Quebec. We have many of our buildings. It's the first thing you will look at and first thing you will notice. A lot of our buildings need some TLC, I think, as you call it. So that's probably a good difference in terms of even though some buildings in the Maritimes still need some TLC, probably not as bad as in Quebec. But I love the fact that I think everybody's a hockey fan, of course, but we just ran a survey, and there's more hockey is a little bit healthier in the Maritimes than it is in Quebec. So that's interesting to me. And the pride. People in the Maritimes, well, everywhere, most people come up to me when they see me or they see the logo or they want to chat or I'm with someone from the team. And they have opinions. Very respectful. But, they speak up. And I just love that. So it's been a very good experience.
What are some of the things that you said in that survey? Like, what were some of the things that you guys were looking for in terms of?
Oh, it was like it's the first time the league did an actual survey to the population. So we surveyed the 4 provinces where we operate. And we basically, asked the basic questions on the business side, the easy side. So ticket prices, how do you feel about them? Why do you come to a game? So a list of all of these things. Who do you come with a game with? Is it a family environment? Is it a buddy? Is it your wife, your husband? I mean, so and I'm glad to say, because a lot of people sometimes say they think it's all relatives sometimes, those who like to have fun with us. It's only 1% of our total fan base that came to the respondents that actually know someone on the team. So people in the stands are actual fans. And then we looked at many things. The name change, obviously, was well appreciated. And then we looked at all, the reasons why they like us, the reason why they don't like us, our reputation level, our notoriety. All of these things allow us to have a base 0 now, and we'll do that on an annual basis and have our check marks and where we want to grow. So that's going to be fun.
Was the name change well received in Quebec, do you think, as well? In the Maritimes, I think we're pretty happy about it.
It was a safe bet in the Maritimes to say that it was going to be well
Right.
received. I'm happy with it. Quebec's probably, well, listen, I'll give you the actual results. We sent a newsletter to the parents of the players on a monthly basis. So, and I actually put the results in there on the last one in March. And the exact numbers of the total respondents, it's 10% who think it's a bad idea. Then 48% of our fans think it's a great idea. The rest, they don't care. Call it whatever you want, as long as it's, because I call it the Q,
Right,
or
yeah.
I'm going to call it LHJMQ. So to me, that's a pretty good score. And obviously, if you take for granted that it's 100% acceptance in the Maritimes, it probably was around a 65, 70% acceptance in Quebec. What happened in the beginning when we announced is probably 2 or 3. The journalists actually didn't like it, and some ripped their shirt off. And but that calmed down pretty quick. And actually, I won't name him, but one journalist, like 3-4 days after, just tweeted again saying, "Listen, guys, I said what I said. It's not the end of the world." And I spoke to another one who wasn't too happy in December just recently. And he basically said, you know what? He admitted to me, not on air, of course. He'll never do it on air.
Of course.
But he said, I'm warming up. I understand why you did it and all that. So it's, to me, it's like, and every time I walk the arenas in Quebec, no one came up and say it's a bad idea. So
What were
I think
some of
it's
the
all good.
reasons that you've heard that it would be a bad idea? Because it's like obviously we have a bias on this because we are in the Maritimes. But what
course.
are some reasons that people
History.
didn't like?
Right.
You know, it's a name. You know, think of Coca-Cola, Coke Classic. I mean, those who love the brand itself, the history behind it, and so on, just, you know, they didn't. So there was no major. It's not a rejection of the Maritimes. It's like it's always been.
Right.
Why change? You guys know something about that. Maybe there was some people not happy when the screaming came out.
You
I
hear
don't know.
that the odd time.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. Like people are, and it's okay because that means you've did a good job and people are emotionally attached to
Yeah.
their brand. That's all. So it was not. I never felt it was like anti-Maritimes or anything like
Right.
that. It was not political. It was more the history of it. But to me, the history is protecting because this thing didn't change.
Right.
As I often say, it's
exactly.
the cheapest rebrand I've ever done. And that's why we announced it in the middle of the year, you know, because it was, we never were able, with 100 people aware, to keep it a secret until next September.
Yeah.
So we came out of the meeting in December. We said, guys, I'm going to announce it this afternoon. There's nothing to be done. People can adjust their websites in the next few days. You'll get the English logo, QMJHL officially. You'll paste it on, and away we go. So not the end of the world.
Some people probably don't even know that it changed if they just keep seeing the abbreviation. Right?
Well, those who don't follow the leagues, actually, it's funny because I do some interviews sometimes with maybe like current events people, not sports people, and they'll go to Quebec, Major League, Maritime, Hockey League, and so they heard something about it. But yeah, so I just say, listen, it's IBM, it's BMW.
Yeah.
Do you know what that means right now? Okay, so it's the QMJHL. Call it
Yeah,
that.
I have no idea what
That's
that
the
means.
brand we want to have.
Yeah.
International business machines.
Yes.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
like KFC. They're not allowed to
KFC.
say fried chicken anymore. I don't think.
Exactly. They went from Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC, and it's international. It's in the world. And the younger people who will go there for the first time probably don't know the K stands for Kentucky. So
Wow.
Now, you've been pretty hands-on, as we talked about. Name change is obviously a pretty significant move, but why did you want to become the commissioner? It seems like you're already pretty active in the role.
it's a good question, and it all started in. So my tenure with the Alouettes ended in December, and it's a long story. That's another totally different story in another podcast. And at that same time, a friend called and said, you know, Gilles, and I know 10 days before. In mid-December, Gilles had announced that he was going to retire, and he said, you should think about that. I said, what do you mean? And started to think. And then what appealed to me was the kids, taking care of, we were in the middle of a lot of things, bad things that were said, Hockey Canada scandal and all that. I worked a lot with the youth in my media career and in the charity work. And so basically I said, listen, it's 16 to 20. That's when teenagers become men. Lots of improvements to be done. It became a social cause. We were in the middle of all of that. And I said, I'm turning 60. It's probably my last gig. Give it 5-7 years. We'll sort of do a checkpoint when I'm 65 and hopefully. And so I can focus on that. I was very, very straightforward with the board that I'm going to look at everything through the lens of the player, and we'll go from there. And obviously we'll take care of business, but we'll go from there, start from there. So all the steps we do, inclusive of the fighting rule, for instance, even though some players don't like it. It's part of the evolution where we want to go playing less games, for instance, that we voted. So we've taken 3 pretty much big decisions since the last 10 months and internal decisions also. So we are knocking down, that elephant one slice at a time, where we're taking care of business one slice at a time, and we'll get there to where we want to be. So that was all the appeal to me.
That was something you mentioned to the players last night in the room, is that from speaking with alumni that they always talk about, playing in the Q was the good old days. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit?
Oh, listen, it surprised me even because I came into a time, unfortunately last year, as you all remember, in Quebec. It was not covered as much in the Maritimes, I believe, But the press in Quebec was very, very hard, which led to Gilles' early dismissal and the parliamentary commission. So, and you're hearing all those stories about the 90s and the 80s. And so you don't really know what to expect when you come in. And then, so I called a lot of people, talked to moms who has become mothers, and everybody was like, "No, no, Mario, it was a different time, different ages, but come on. I mean, maybe I had 2 bad days, but it's the best experience of my life." And I say, expand on that. You're not just saying me to please me, and no, they're not. I mean, it's as you know, it's the locker room, it's the camaraderie. I can say that in English.
Yeah,
Camaraderie is the time that they grow up. It's like a lot of us, you think of school and university, you're a little bit free, you don't pay taxes yet, all of these things. You play hockey, guys, you play hockey. And you're coached and you're taken care of, and your school, you're basically in a billet family, you meet new people, you grow up so quickly. And you're sort of mind free. You take care of your school, take care of this, nothing to pay. You don't worry about anything, just getting better, staying in shape. That's all the things they were mentioning. And even Stéphane Richer, I told the story to the guys last night after, that it hit me most when he was at the introduced in the Hall of Fame last year of the QMJHL. And literally tell the story. And Stéphane Richer is like, he's you know him a little bit?
Yeah.
No BS at all. Like, he used to get in trouble for his comments, And for those who don't know, he's the last 50-goal scorer of the Canadiens.
Habs fans know very well.
That was in the last century, so it's about time we get another one. But, and he mentioned that he grew up going to the practices of the then All Olympics. And that's where he wanted to play. That's where he wanted to be drafted. That was his moment. And the NHL for him was just a continuity of that moment. And the way he positioned it, I had chills because wow, this is when I'm coming in, starting to realize what it means to these guys. And so we're working hard now to bring them back, because I want the players right now to be in the moment. But sometimes you got to step back just a little bit and say, look at my other friends, my livelihood. This is special. Yeah. Like, you get 3,000-4,000 people coming and watch me play. I'm part of a team. Yeah. All of these things that nobody should take for granted, and it should never get old.
And also, like, even just from hanging around the boys, like, they're hanging around with 15 of their best friends all day, every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a dream life. Yeah. At that age, it's like, and they get to do their craft and make it better. And even, I was told here, even we were questioning sometimes, we were talking about traveling and say how those Quebec trips and so on. Most of them, the coaches, the gym, no, that's when they have fun.
Yes.
They feel like an NHL team. They go on the road. Listen, it's a very unique experience.
I know the players, they talk about those trips. It's a give and take. They kind of get worn down by them, but those are the memories too.
Yeah.
And you talked about, I don't know if people realize how involved and how busy this visit has been for you, because you got to meet a lot of the Billet families, and I know a couple of players, Squires and Patterson's parents were here too.
Yeah.
How nice was that to be in a reception and get to meet all the Billets? How important is that for you?
My God, I don't know where to start. The appreciation for these people. I sent an email to Melissa this morning to make sure that she sends it to them. I met Tina, who I don't have the second name, but Tina from who's the billet for Thomas Lavoie.
Yes.
Because I met Thomas' mom way back in Moncton, and then back in when they were at the Bell Center to be honored. Met Cam's dad. One family has 3 players. Some are doing it for 12 years. Other have just joined in. They don't realize that, they bring it in. And what hits me, it's the experience for them is also extremely, extremely enriching. And I always tell the story. When I was growing up, Guy Lafleur was my hero in my era. And every time he was honored, when his jersey was retired in '86, I was at the game, and before he came back. And he had Madame Baribeau, his billet family. She was there all the time. He never forgot her. And to me, I guess because of who he was, I associate it with it. And what they do is very important. I'm glad they accepted the invitation just basically to say thank you. They don't realize how important what they do is for the stability. You know, when you talk to the mom of Thomas, for example, who leaves home at 16, think back, you know, you go 18 hours away from Montreal, you have to feel secure. And then the person who adopts him for a year or so, and maybe 2 and 3, has a great responsibility. So it's superb. And obviously we talk how they don't eat that much, you know. It's unbelievable.
It's funny you mentioned Lavoie specifically because he's in Pierre-Luc Dubois territory, I think, for eating.
Oh, listen, it's so funny, but they're athletes, you know. They spend I don't know how many energy a day, so they need their gasoline, I guess one would say.
Yeah.
That's right.
Obviously, like you made the jump because when you were with the Alouettes and you came over. Now in the hockey world, do you have much of a hockey background yourself?
Well, I, like every kid, played pretty much up until, in my days, was called double letters where I was playing. So double A or double B. There was no triple A. And so played them, but then went to school outside. And I wanted to try out for the junior team, but basically my mom did not agree. And so I said, okay, I didn't know it. So I stopped then to play. Obviously, then played in garage leagues. I don't think I would have had the talent. Don't take me wrong. I would just have loved to try out. You know, I was too small anyway, but it would have been fun. So, but then afterwards was always involved because in broadcast I had, as we talked about off air, I managed the Fan 590, what was the only radio station sports dedicated to sports in Canada, and then obviously created the first French radio all sports station in Montreal in 2007. So always been around, had the Canadians rights, so and at the Raptors rights, so always was around. And back in '93, produced the radio show on the News and Talk station, leading one in Montreal at that time. So my first interview was with Patrick Roy, and I'm not saying anything. But that's the last year they won the cup. I'm not saying anything. But so that was like 30 years ago now, 31 years ago. So always been around sports after that and hockey. Obviously, you cannot be in Canada if you're around sports. You're around hockey.
Right.
So know a lot of the folks, so it was pretty good. It was an ease. Like when I came in, I knew, you know, the play-by-play of everybody. I sort of either worked with them, fired them, hired them. So it was the first press conference with the Alouettes was all that. The guys in front of me we all worked together at one point. It was really strange when you cross that. You don't ask the questions anymore. You get asked. So it's really strange.
The other side of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, obviously, a big change is the Q going down to 64 games.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about how that came together. And have you got any response from the OHL and WHLs? They're still sitting at 68.
I got congratulations. When I informed them through email that we were doing that change, basically I just said, you know, hey, good for you, congratulations, well done, from the commissioners. So there was no issue there. That's part of everybody can manage their team the way that they see fit. To me, it's all about the burden on the player, basically. And we basically sort of said it could be, and we're open with it, it could be a first step to 60. We'll see. We wanted everybody to absorb that change first. There's obviously a business side to manage. We want to do this very properly, respectfully of our teams, of our fans, and our teams, of course. But it's about if we can, and you guys know something about it. I mean, it's the traveling for the players. We want them to succeed in school. People don't know this that much. We're dead serious about that. They need to do good. They need to have some time. So that's going to alleviate a bit that burden. We'll see how it goes. And everything that goes with it. Obviously, it's 4 weeks. It's like 4 Wednesdays. So it's 4 longer weeks, more practice time to develop your skills or training if you want. And why not rest a little bit once in a while also. So all this going to ease that burden a bit. And then we'll see if we go to 60, maybe in a year or two or something like that, and that should be good. So that was the only and main reason. And then I applaud the owners because obviously you need to rethink the way you're going to add the revenue there and how you attack it. So it's not an easy thing to do, and people should appreciate that.
And I think something too that people might think that 68 to 64 doesn't sound like a significant change, but I guess like what you said, for a team like this, when you think about if you have one game on a Wednesday and we play in Moncton or Charlottetown, it's like there's a travel day, there's a travel back, there's maybe the rest day when you get back. So it's like that's almost a whole week's worth of.
For a team like you, it's probably 12 days.
Yeah.
When just what you just described, it's 12 days of boom suddenly appears in the calendar for the coach and the GM to plan something else. So absolutely, no, it is significant.
Can you tell me about so now that you're kind of right in the mix with your new position now, can you kind of give me an idea of what like your day-to-day is like as league commissioner?
No routine at all.
No day is the
that's
same.
the great thing. No day is the same. I would say, first of all, the first thing that people are surprised by, I probably spend a day and a half a week on schooling, talking with Valérie, who is our head of school, for a number of issues that come up. And most of it is like trying to be flexible to adapt, what a player wants to do. And some of the changes we did is like recognize maybe someone who wants to do a craft per se, wants to be a welder, an electrician, and maybe his father has a business that already says and sons. So he knows he's going to that business. So maybe university is not his path. So we pay for his electrician courses. So trying to be flexible that way. God knows we did something for somebody who wanted to be a truck driver. And one thing we learned through the COVID is that these guys are essential. So we find a way to have his theory done during the season. Then he's going to practice driving the truck, actually, the 18-wheeler in the summer. And we were able to make that work. Now we're reaching out to firemen association, police association also. So we're trying to make all this. So that's a good chunk of the work. Obviously, the hockey committee on every Monday after the weekend is all about that. And then afterwards, it's the usual. You get the sponsors, work with the CHL. So taking care of the future. Say my job is to think probably 2-3 years ahead to make sure where we want to be. But sometimes where you want to be in 3 years, it's major changes. You need to start now in order to cultivate the idea and making sure. So we're building around that. Some a little bit legal issues here and there that unfortunately we have to take care of. But so it's never. And then there's that. GM is going to call once in a while saying, you missed a call last night. I wasn't there. And then so we have those that are fun, but usually extremely respectful. It's a very good league in that sense. Everybody wants the league to move forward, wants the league to look good, and that's why they care and they're passionate. So I don't mind that at all. And then the owners that I try to talk to 2 or 3 owners on a weekly basis. I want to touch base with them, see what's going on, how we can make sure that everybody's on board. And then we dig on how we can help and ticket sales, just be supportive. That's not our responsibility, but to highlight some of the things. What we try to do is leave the competition on the ice, but collaborate as a management team, as 18 management team, 19 with the league, make sure that the information circulates, best practices, what is good here. A lot of things that were done in Cape Breton on social media, for example, kudos to you guys, is taken out of your context and shared with the rest. Carl Jenke does a great job of that, making sure on everything that we discuss. And I'm very collaborative oriented, so nobody's taken by surprise by all those discussions, like reductions of game and so on. They come. And then at one point, when the information is shared, we vote on it. So it's pretty much 6 days a week. So, what I love is that during the game at night, I get those reports if there's a high sticking or there's something. We get it live. I get the clip. I know the next morning I'm going to talk to Eric, the discipline manager, if you will, director of the league. And okay, the right call, yes. Does it deserve more? 1 game, 2 game, 3 games, suspension, whatever. So away we go. So it's always fun.
You touched
Very
on
hands-on.
Yeah, very. You touched on earlier, like in a market like this specifically, how important this team is for Cape Breton and for Sydney. On the other side of things, like how much of an economic impact does a Q team actually have on the surrounding community?
It varies a lot. To your point, the smaller the community, the bigger the team is. Average is probably, we like to think there was one or two studies. One is being done here right now. It's probably $6 to $8 million, minimally, of economic fallouts. I think is the expression that you called it. Yeah. So that would be the main point. In market like Montreal, Quebec City is going to vary from Halifax to Rouen. So, but that's still going to be the average. People are still going to fill up, and at the big market like Quebec City, for example, when the Ramparts are playing and a bad crowd is going to be 7,000. Well, there's restaurants around that are filled up, so it's important. It has its importance, and people recognize it.
You mentioned earlier like big changes in long-term planning. The Q has actually had the same structure since the Eagles came in. It's been the same 18 teams. Do you think that changes? Not even so much necessarily with teams potentially relocating, but I know expansion is probably something you think about too.
Well, we hope not to relocate at this point. I like the stability. You guys know it's sort of a fickle business. It's fragile. I mean, you can have one or two bad moves and you can lose a year or two. So you need to come back. So we have to be conscious of that. And fans are demanding. So you have to be extremely respectful of fans. It takes the time to build that relationship. So stability to me on that front is good. Expansion, if I look at the 10-year window, it's possible. If I look at the 5-year window, probably not likely. We are very conscious of the pool of players right now. And so we don't want to dilute the product. Most observers would tell you, you're about in the right place right now. 2 more teams probably would hurt a little bit the spectacle. So let's give time to Hockey Nova Scotia, Hockey New Brunswick, and Hockey Quebec, Hockey PEI to do some work to make sure that the inscription to hockey are back up and that we have a bigger pool of good players. Taller players, apparently, heavier players. That's what the NHL wants. Apparently, we're small, I'm told. But then, exactly, and then then we can think about expansion and things.
Changing the biology of players. Mario can do a lot in the Q commissionership. That's probably above your pay grade.
I cannot do. What I can try to do is remind everyone that sometimes there were great goalers that were also 5'10", and were extremely successful. So I don't know where that 6'2" comes from. I intellectually get it, but I feel very sorry for the guys who are 5'11", and automatically they are. That to me is a mistake, but what do I know?
Our goalie coach, Blade Man Dixon, just became his biggest fan.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly, yeah.
There you go.
Of course, the league was also in the headlines too because you decided to make the rule changes about fighting. You said you got messages of congratulations when you made the schedule announcement. What was the response like to that change, and how did all that discussion go down leading up to the rule change?
A little bit less congratulations from the West. Okay. You guys can read social media. I did not read it. I was told about it. Well, to me, that was, first of all, that was coming in. It was actually before I came in. I was announced in March, if you remember, and took over in May. But when we were discussing the mandate with the owners, I was pretty straightforward on that, on where I stood. So there was no surprises. But the owners were there, I think. So I just happened to come at the end of the conversation. It was 15 years in the making, actually. If you go back to 2005 or 6, I believe was I'm going to use the word worst, like the worst year, like 700 fights. For your view, reminding everyone, 612 games. Right. So more than one game, a fight a game. Then it started to go down. There was that famous goalie fight, if you remember, in 2008. And that was sort of a little bit of a tipping point. And then new rules were enforced. And again in 2016, and every time. So last year we were down to 106 fights. I always include preseason. So 106 fights and about 687 games. And so we just fast forwarded. I said, a lot of people were saying, you're like, there's an expression that say you're kicking open doors. I don't know if that translates. You're already there.
Right.
You have much less fights than the other league. Just let it go. And you can look at this and say, yes, so we have much less fight than the other leagues, so why not just end it? Because it won't be a great disturbance. And we did the rule. And so, no, to me, I'm very I was one of the few, maybe, very happy with that rule. It goes with taking care of the kids, whether they like it or not. I mean, that's part of it. And at the end of the day, uh, we were told, beware, you'll have less fans, cheap shots. That's the usual arguments. Well, now we're the first of all, let's step back a little bit before I go to my stats. The entire world doesn't fight. Europe doesn't fight, doesn't allow fighting. NCAA doesn't allow fighting. They even play with full face, right? If I understand correctly. So let's start there. And there's 50% of those in the NHL. So when a scout comes to me and says things that some of them said always without naming themselves, so it's always that anonymous source. I don't have huge respect for that, because if you have an opinion, say it, and it's okay, But come and defend it, and tell me why. The NHL, they do what they want. Different story. Adults, all of them, and they earn a living. It's a professional. It's different. Here we have as much guys who will be accountants as there'll be actually more accountants and hockey players, most likely. So we have to be just mindful of where we are in the stage of development. Nobody fights before they get to junior, So the Europeans that come over, so the argument to me that you need to prep for the NHL, well, who's the darling of the... It's the USA that taken a lot of the Canadian market shares over the past 20 years in terms of hockey players, percentage that they represent, originate from in the NHL. These leagues don't fight. So something doesn't jive, So basically, to me, that was all points that make it much easier to go to that rule. And after 550 odd games, 91% this morning as we talk of the season gone, we have growth in our audience by 5% overall. In the Maritimes here in Cape Breton, I think it's 20% over last year, the attendance. So I won't say case closed, but these are facts now. This is a case study. These are facts. And suspensions are about the same as last year number-wise, and less games suspended. So we haven't seen any surge at all of what people are saying. And I know, because I think that generation of kids, that's not what they want to show off. So that, to me, the conversation was all about that, was all about butt heads to a certain extent. But within the ownership structure, those who actually had to vote, some people were not. We're afraid of the business side of it, how it's going to look. Are we going to get less drafted? You make the case. Right now, nobody talks to me about it anymore. Great game last night. We get good skills. You see the guys actually taking their player, finishing their body check or taking him out of the play. You don't need a high stick in the face. You don't need a cheap shot. You don't need to fight. I mean, it's just the way it is. And if a guy does his job, a good shoulder hit, and it's spectacular, and you fall on your back and you lose your stick, but it's all legal, why should he fight? Because he did his job, right? Why should he have to turn around? And so I understand the whole... I know, just so people are aware, I know we're talking about culture and changing it. But there's many ways. Back in my days, you would take the number, okay, that's number 18. Third period, he's going to come along the boards at one point. I'll give him a good body check. Just remind him, You don't need to put stick to the face. You don't need to do the cheap shots, and you don't need to fight, in my view.
Is that something you think the NHL will kind of lean towards? Because obviously, NHL now, even compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago, is significantly different in terms of roughness or fighting. Do you think that the NHL might be there someday?
I think so. I will dare say I hope so. I think that I was very surprised to read so openly Nicolas Deslauriers from the Flyers 2-3 weeks ago after a fight. He's one of those tough guys. And basically said that he realizes that he's on the way out. His words, not mine. That hockey now is all about skills. And I think the same generation of kids here who are not that much complaining, they're going to play in the NHL in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So is it maybe just a natural evolution? It's the NHL. Don't get me wrong. I'm not commenting. I'm not saying. You're asking me if I think it's going to go there. I think it's going to go there because of the players themselves. there's always going to be that emotional. And I'm not like, listen, Muhammad Ali is one of my heroes. So it's not about fighting per se. It's about fighting at that age when it's not your craft, on skates. And to me, what I don't like is, fighting is it's 167 pounds against 167 pounds. I saw a fight this year that I didn't like at all, where it was the nightmare. It was 19-year-old, 16, 30 pounds difference. Guess what happens? Nothing good can come out of that, So that's what we don't like. And unfortunately, that's going to happen. In the NHL, they know each other more. They have that code. Like nobody's weighing 250 is going to jump on, a guy weighing 165.
Right.
That's just the way it is. Like nobody's going to grab Cole Caulfield and want to fight with him.
And because there's still guys out there that you can see on every roster that still kind of play that role in a different way, whether it be body checking, like, I don't want to say any names, but like maybe Lucas Romeo, like with us, like kind of the more tougher characters, you know what I mean? So it's like there's still a role to be played.
Yeah.
I guess it's just probably adapted in terms of taking.
I was going to say adapt. There's a good saying that I like: those who live by the sword get shot by those who don't.
I've never heard that before.
So you need to adapt, or you die.
Yes.
To the extent. So you need to adapt, and that's true in every businesses, in every instances of life. I remember Larry Robinson. So for those young, go Google him. Yeah. Larry
Great
Robinson
player.
was 6'4". He fought once or twice. He didn't need to fight at all to intimidate. He was on the ice. The Flyers even were a bit more quieter when he was on the ice. Simple as that. I mean, there's many ways to make your presence felt.
Yeah. And plus, all these tough guys score as well, right?
You want to show off your skill.
Yeah.
The saddest story I heard, I won't name him because it's up to him to go public. Former player, NHL, tough guy. He's 19 years old. He's good. And he's told, listen, you're so big, you'll have to become a fighter. He was told that. And I'm going back in the late 80s, late 80s, early 90s. He said, okay, fine, I want to be in the show. I'll do what the coach said. And at the end of the day, today, regrets it. He was telling me the story, little watery eyes, because he was good. And people remember him as a goon versus his skills, because that's what he was told that he should do. I don't know if he would have made it. I don't know. But he surely would probably have loved to have a shot at it. So these are, I'm not making any of this up. These are true stories I hear. And, sometimes I say, you got to be careful what you do in your past because it's going to haunt you in the future. Mm-hmm. So take care of today, and tomorrow's going to be better. So that's what we're doing right now.
And just to wrap up here, we're coming up to the postseason. It was a good season we had this year. For maybe this year and for next year, what would you say your overall goal is for not only this league, but I guess for yourself?
Well, listen, first, next year, I have an overarching objective always is to do our best to influence on infrastructure everywhere. That's one of the needs. Every building, needs something. And it's not $10, unfortunately. It's always in the millions. So we have to work with the municipalities, with the provincial governments to make our point that it's not just for one team. It's good for minor hockey. It's good for Ice Cube. If you make the building better, the fan experience, all of these things need to. So that's ongoing. So that's always on my mind. Probably next year is going to be to make sure that we go through the first reduction of schedule in a good way. There's a lot of pressure on the schedule also in terms of how we do 3-on-3s, trying to reduce those a little bit, trying to question all the guys. Can we play at 1 o'clock sometimes? Can we play at 4 and 3 and 2 maybe? So guys who are traveling back can go to bed at midnight and 1 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. like last night, PI. So that's a week game. Cannot do much about that, but try to minimize all this. And it's a challenge because it's really the availabilities of the arenas are a real challenge. So that's something next year that's going to be very important. Obviously, ongoing training, off ice. We're always alert on that. We always want to make sure we surround the kids in a good way. We want to take care of mental health. So that's never going away. Like when you ask me my priorities, it's always going to be 1, 2, 3, these things. And then obviously helping everybody out, how we can work together, growing the audience, growing the fans coming to games, making CHL TV better. It's always going to be something that's also that's a 3-league topic because we sort of joined there, so that's always interesting. So all of these, say right now, we're all about collaborating and making sure that, again, if there's conversations that have been going on for 5-10 years, that we make decisions and we move on them. So we try to get things done.
Well, I think it'll be fun to watch the changes. Might end up doing this again at this time next year, right, Brett?
Yeah, I think so. I think the league's in good hands for the foreseeable future. Thanks very much.
We have a good
Mario.
set of owners. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for your time.